Good morning. I'm going to call the I have to look at what day it is. January 23rd meeting of the VPRA board to order. We're going to start with our safety briefing. Mr. Bates. I saw him in here a minute ago. Hello. Welcome back.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Executive Director, members of the board, those in attendance, those here remote. Good morning.
Morning.
All right. Let's get started. So we are located at 919 East Main Street. We're in the PMI room on the 4th floor. The women's restrooms are on the west side. The men's restrooms are on the east side facing 10th Street. The CPR assigned, Miss Mary Estelle Douglas. 911 caller is Mary Estelle Douglas. Secondary is Michael Westerman. CPR assigns myself, Lamar Bates. Secondary is Joan Penny. All right, meeting the first responders. Assigned is Mike McLaughlin. Secondary is Steve Pitter. Raise your hand, please. All right. We will call the security desk if you need an AED. The first aid kit on a table on the other side of the room, if we need that. The stairwells and fire alarms are at both restrooms. The fire extinguishers are located near the women's restroom. There's a fire extinguisher near the closet beside the tile water line. Right? So there are two exits in here, but we're only going to use one today. One exit. It'll be the exit that we came in, the entrance today. We'll leave out that side over there. If there's a fire alarm, we'll exit via the stairway. We'll assemble at 9th and Capitol Square. And ensure your person to your left and your right that is here, make sure they're there. That's very important if we do that. If you see something, say something. If there's an active shooter, you must either flee, hide, or fight for the last resort. For our remote participants, be aware of phishing emails and scams, and also know your medical emergencies and evacuation strategies. Do we have any questions?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's have a safe day.
Thank you. All right. Next up on our agenda is welcome. So I just want to welcome everybody to Richmond again today. I'm going to introduce, we have a special visitor with us today. It's the Secretary of Transportation, Shep Miller, and I'm going to give you my time to welcome the board.
Okay. You want to go up here? You want to stand here? Where would you like me to be?
Anywhere you want.
Anywhere you want.
You're the secretary, sir.
Turning around, my Mr. Moore had it back to me. That would not be
Your
proper.
audio will probably be better at the podium.
You better hear?
Yeah.
Well, really, I just wanted to come by and say thanks to all y'all. Give the greetings from the governor and the administration, and thanks for what you've done. It's been 4 years, 4 really quick years, I think, for VPRA from 0 to where we are today. And obviously, there's incredible progress that's happened in Virginia. You all should be congratulated. And I want to thank you for everything that you've done. I'm particularly grateful for the work y'all have done on the grant side. Just a small amount of money this year, $829 million that you were able to secure. So that is fantastic and obviously solves lots of problems in terms of funding, but more importantly, to get things going here in Virginia with the plan that we have. So I wanted to come and say thank you to that. Most of you all probably don't know me very well. I grew up in the city of Norfolk. I still live there on weekends sometimes when I'm not here or somewhere else. But I grew up as a little boy. I'm 66 years old, and I grew up as a little boy, and my father loved the railroad. So I had a great-grandfather who was the agent for R&P in Fredericksburg. But when I was a kid, we'd get in the car on Saturday and go downtown and look at the trains, the Norfolk and Western trains, the maroon trains, the passenger trains that were downtown. And I lived very close, as Jim knows, to the Norfolk and Western coal piers as well. So I've had that in my life. But watching those trains downtown and watching the train station, my father would get on a train and go to Roanoke. It was a big deal to go to Roanoke the Hotel Roanoke where they had lots of conventions. But I'd always go down the train station and wave goodbye and, just remember those days. And it continued until the mid-'70s. I used to get in the train in the back of Ghent, Jim, and get on the Amtrak train and go to Farmington, to Hampton City College where I was enrolled. And they, unfortunately, that stopped. I think 1977, I was 2 years in. But I've just always loved trains, and obviously they're important to the Commonwealth and important to the citizens. And so what you all have done is fantastic. So I wanted to come and say thank you for that. 2023 ridership up 30%. I think you were on a roll and you messed up in December. You broke every month. Every month you broke a record, except December you were just a little bit short. And Jen, I think you need to do better. And that's another reason I wanted to come today, to thank DJ for what he's done for us and will continue to do, but particularly Chairman DeBrule, as you know, who has decided to retire at the end of June. And so we're sad in a way, but we're happy. We're happy because you won't be bossing me around anymore. I explained to my deputy that I couldn't be here on time. And I'll note that you started your meeting 15 seconds late. It was within the minute, so I was very impressed. But thank you for what you've done. But Jen and I have a history, probably 10 or 12 years, of working together when I was on the transportation board, working with Thelma and others. So I've known her for a fairly long time, and she's an incredible lady who does great work. She's very passionate. She's hard to sort of manage sometimes. Y'all know that? That's a really. She's an independent thinker, and she's passionate about what she does, and that we will miss a lot. So I wanted to come here and thank her in front of all y'all. Thank her. So, rail's going to be really important for Virginia now and into the future. Its resurgence. And so, again, I wanted to thank you for what you did and have done and will do. And tell you we're behind you and here to help you. And we'll continue to work to advance rail in Virginia. It's really exciting to see it go. And I'm glad we were able to fill that hole up, Mr. Statler, with that grant. And, the truth is, and I think that's the reason we got the grant, it's not just Virginia for this. This is not, Long Bridge is not about Virginia, really. It's about the entire East Coast of the United States. And so we're blessed that the federal government saw the reality of that and helped us out. So, again, congratulations. 4 years. It'd be interesting to see where we are 4 more years from now. We're going to have a lot of good stuff going on. So appreciate you having me. And I was going to stay and get into the details of the capital budgeting and Steve has asked me to go back to work.
Mr. Secretary, you'll have your chance at that at the February Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting.
And maybe in between.
And yeah, at least once in between.
So again, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it, and enjoy your meeting.
Thank you,
Just
sir.
don't rearrange the room, and without putting it back, you have to pay a fee. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up on our agenda is public comment. Oh,
Madam Chairman, we have some other guests that, could they introduce themselves? I'm nervous because they're longtime transportation people. So that maybe will correct me when I ask a question. But it's just the two of you from outside? Is there anyone else in the room? No.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Sandy. I'm Rob Kieran, and I'm a consultant in Washington. I spent 10 years working with Central Japan Railway Company on their high-speed rail initiatives here in the States. And I have a long history with Sandy going way back.
Yeah.
So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Scheib. I'm with Gentry Lock Attorneys. I'm former Chief Legal Officer and Chief Strategy Officer for Norfolk Southern Railroad.
thank you. So we have no one else signed up for public comment. If there's anybody else in the room that wants to speak, we can do that now. Hearing none, Mary Estelle, could you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bulova?
Here.
Ms. Bouchou? Here. Mr. Cardwell?
Here.
Mr. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Delandro?
Here.
Ms. Dorsch? Here.
Ms. Drake?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Maestri? Ms. Moses Ned? Here. Mr. Payne? Ms. Reinhardt?
Here.
Mr. Spore?
Here.
Mr. Watkins?
Here.
We have a quorum. Next item on our agenda is approval of our minutes from the December 6th meeting. Do I have a motion to?
So Hall.
Second. Moved by Mr. Hall, second by Ms. Bulova. Any further comments, questions? All right, Mary Sell, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bulova?
Aye.
Ms. Bushu?
Aye.
Mr. Cardwell?
Aye.
Mr. Delandro?
Aye.
Ms. Dorsch?
Aye.
Ms. Drake?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Moses Ned? Ms. Reinhardt?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Spore?
Aye.
Mr. Watkins? Thank you. Motion carries.
Motion carries. Adler, time for your executive director's report.
Madam Chair.
Secretary just stole all your thunder and shared all your.
I know. Any
There
questions?
you go.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to see everybody here. Happy New Year. I know it's a little, but it's the first time I'm seeing a lot of you. The Executive Director's report is in the same format as normal. The first thing we'll talk about is organizational updates. Staffing pretty flat. We're right around 50. We've got 9 openings, and as you can see, there are 3 accepted. We are starting our intern program, so we have worked very hard as kind of a pipeline for talent to get interns in from various schools in different organizations. And as we continue to evolve, Kim Coleman is our head of HR, and I want by her whiteboard, and we need interns in finance and interns in engineering and interns in planning. So we're really working to get that program to continue to evolve and give us a pipeline for talent. But we're in good shape on a staffing point of view. Administrative updates, our Alexandria office opened last month. And so now we are staffed up there. You see some pictures. It's right by the King Street station. It's within walking distance of the VPRA offices, multimodal access there. It's really a great open space for folks to work. We've got folks up there from VPRA and also folks from our Long Bridge project as well, the consultants. So
Can I take the next board meeting?
So the next
Oh.
board meeting will be actually in our Alexandria area. It'll be in our office because we're concerned about a conference room that's big enough. But spoiler alert, the last slide of the board meeting today talks about our next meeting being in Alexandria. So I guess we can adjourn. Nicely done.
And you didn't mention that you're right across the street from the DRPT Alexandria.
That's true. We're right across the street from the DRPT Alexandria. But yes, it's exciting to have that open because we have a lot going on in that area for sure. Here is the normal chart you see about our gender breakout and our race breakout, our age pretty much consistent with what you've seen over the last few months. We're pleased about our diversity outreach in all those categories as we acquire new talent, recruit and retain, which is important. So I want to spend a few minutes on our annual incentive plan goals. You've seen these before. We are now shockingly 6 months into the fiscal year, so we're moving quickly. 3 months and change into our performance year. These are the 4 goals. The first goal, we're on track for a ridership point of view. The secretary pointed out that 2023, we were 30% higher, which is tremendous. Our goal is to increase by 3%. I know people say, well, wait a second, you hit 30%, your goal is only 3, but as we'll talk about in a few minutes, it really flattens out once we have year-over-year comparison of new service. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Cost recovery at 69%. We're slightly above our goal, which is a good thing. And Steve will talk more about that. Long Bridge is our second goal. We're on track for both of those. So that's a high 5. The one so far. The third one is the one I really wanted to focus on. So this is the key milestones for the other key projects. 2 of the 3 we're in great shape. You'll hear about New River Valley later today. The first one was complete contractor selection for 4th track by end of month in May. And that was where we thought we would be when we set these goals. We've had some issues with land acquisition, and there are folks on the team that have learned more about the history of railroad land in the last 2 years than I think we ever wanted to know. Between records that have passed from railroad to railroad through mergers and otherwise, records that have been lost in fires, records that literally are in cookie jars in old kitchens right along the right of way. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. And as we go through the land acquisition, we want to make sure that we're getting this right. CSX is doing the procurement for the fourth track contractor. We could actually name the contractor well before May. We could actually have it done in April, but early works is taking place. We're doing tree clearing. We've got a lot of work going on. It doesn't really add any value for us to bring them on board early. We're not going to need them to ramp up until later in the year. So while we could make the selection and have them on board before May just to arbitrarily hit this goal, from a business point of view, it doesn't make sense. We don't need to have them on board until later in the summer. So we're making the choice to not bring them on board. We will miss this goal, but that's the way things have unfolded. The good news is that the completion date for fourth track has not moved. We're still doing a lot of work on the front end. Again, I talked about clearing, but this is just an example of we set a very aggressive goal and we didn't hit it, and we'll hit hopefully most of the other ones, but be committed to ourselves as a leadership team, and I think to ourselves as an organization, that we are not going to make bad business decisions just to hit these goals. So I wanted to just point that out because that is delayed and we do not plan to bring that contractor on board early. We just don't. So any questions about that? Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
So so I was a little confused, DJ. Is that CSX contractor or is that VPRA?
That's CSX chooses the contractor. So it's a contractor that will work for CSX. Okay. So they do the procurement on that. And then the organizational goals were in good shape. Our ERP second phase is doing well. Our PMIS is doing well. The project management process we've met on. So the rest of that is in good shape. I just wanted to highlight that one. So last board meeting, we talked a lot about DBE and SWAM as far as it works in our procurement, and we committed to giving you an update at every single board meeting on where we are. Just a refresher, and I promise you I'm not going to read everything on the sheet, but this is the breakdown of the different acronyms that we follow when we do procurement with regards to DBE SWAM programs. We're in it's not really a unique position because a lot of folks are in it, but we accept federal money, so that has some rules. We have state money, so that has some rules. This sheet right here outlines all of the different categories that apply to DBE/SWAM. The next page will show you just a hierarchy. So people ask all the time, well, I'm a small business, I'm also a micro business, where do I fall? This is the hierarchy. So if you qualify on the right-hand side, that's where you are, and it cascades up to the left. So you can't get double credit is the point. And then we will continue to update you this on every board meeting. Our goal for 2024 is 10%. On our discretionary spending through the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year, we're just over 11%. So we're in good shape on that goal on discretionary. It continues to be a focus. I promise you, as long as John Kostanuk is the head of procurement, we won't do a single purchase without hearing the word SWAM, which is good. We appreciate that. Is John here? I don't want to. Yeah. So yeah, John, I have never met someone more, and I don't say that with hyperbole, who is more passionate about SWAM and small business, which is great. And we're glad that you're here to continue to kick us and nudge us on that, make sure we continue to do the right thing. So, through the first 2 quarters, we are above goal. We'll continue to make that a strong focus for us, and then we'll be back at the next board meeting to talk about the next year's goals. Any questions about this? Okay, contracting updates. Just 2 contract updates. Anything that we award above $250,000 but less than $5 million, we report here. There were 2. One was the independent cost estimator for the bypass. So what's going to happen is the bypass designer comes in, the company comes in and says, hey, we think that the bypass is going to cost X. This ICE, independent cost estimator, looks at that and says, yes, that cost is reasonable. That cost is way out of bounds, and we have to work to get a cost that everybody's happy with. That contract was signed in December, and then in January, we signed the Franconia to Lorton third track, just the right-of-way acquisition plan for that project. Just a side note, we start this morning. Yes, Mr. Carney? Tree clearing? Yes. Okay. This morning, tree clearing started in the Franconia area. We received notification. We've been working with the Fairfax County Park Authority, working very well with them. They wrote us a letter last week saying, hey, we've got some concerns about the work that you're doing right alongside the parks. So we are not doing work right in that area today. We started further south. we're going to meet with them over the coming weeks or so just to make sure that their concerns are addressed and that we're mitigating any impact. Right now, we're working hard in this area to just do tree clearing, just felling trees and shipping them out. I thought I learned a lot about rail acquisition. I've learned a lot about bat mating seasons too. The bats will begin mating right on April 1st. So we need to make sure all those trees are down by then. So we'll do that. Any questions about that? Budget adjustments, no budget adjustments in December. The budget continues to be in good shape. Passenger service updates. We talked about the ridership before. With the ridership has come very good revenues. We're in a good position. Steve will talk more about the budget in a few minutes, but all the different categories we're in good shape. We've worked closely with Amtrak to fix that revenue blip that we had over the summer, and the train operations are going very well. Administrative budget, we're pretty much where we expected to be. We're a little bit under budget on payroll, which isn't a bad thing. But we have no concerns about the administrative budget. Happy to answer any questions that you have on any category. Pretty consistent month to month. There haven't been any big anomalies or blips.
DJ, can I just ask about pleased that revenues are up, but strong coordination with Amtrak revenue management team, positive impact on train revenues. I don't know if Jeremy's here, but I always appreciate that update. How did we write this?
He's going to come this afternoon and talk more about that. But okay. As far as the actual revenue, so Amtrak came, they made a change to their revenue management early in calendar year 2023. And they'll admit to this, they weren't as open in their communication as they could have been with us. And it had some unintended consequences that we didn't expect, I guess, by definition of unintended consequences. Steve's giving the dirty eye.
I would just add twice we sort of been, I won't call it, guinea pig with their new system rollouts.
I think you just offended every guinea pig in the country.
The first time we were not made aware. The second time we were, and they basically went to automated, capacity seat modeling where the train wasn't full. They were going off the lowest tier pricing until it got to a certain level versus allowing the machine to do that, but also exercising some human oversight. And so we're like, okay, let's see what the AI can do. And quickly, I think within 2 months, we realized, hey, it's selling all the tickets at the lowest fare, and it's really impacting our revenue, which the revenue, as y'all know, is built into our long-range financial plan. And so Amtrak was very responsive and allowed us to go back to where use the machine, but some human oversight. So that's what DJ said happened about a year ago when they brought in the airline pricing model with tiers. And this year they kind of turned the machine on completely. But they have been, I will say, working with Amtrak for 12 years at least. In this process, they've been very good with us, very receptive to our concerns. We meet with them every 2 weeks to take a look at the data from the prior 2 weeks. So I'm very happy with where that's at.
Yeah, and I would just add that and they realize this, the airline pricing model makes sense for airlines, but that's where you're going city pair to city pair. We go Richmond to Staples Mill to Ashland and a lot more complexities. And to their credit, they've realized that and worked well with us to really stabilize that pricing. And the chair pointed out that Jeremy did not make it on the agenda today. So
I was like, did I miss it?
He's up at his desk sweating it.
So just, Steve, to your comment, so it's no longer the lowest fare, is that?
A certain amount of tickets are sold off that lower tier.
Yeah, right.
9 tier, certain amount
Okay.
are sold off that. And then depending on just sort of like the closer you get to the date of travel,
Yeah.
the more it's going to move up. The more full the train gets, the more it moves up.
And that model works better for us.
I mean, like DJ said, it's not perfect, but they worked with us to implement it, and then they've tried to make it fully automated, and they worked with us on that to say, wait a minute, we went too far. So,
Okay.
and the other thing I'll add, they also worked with us. There hadn't been a fare increase since 2018 or 2019, and so they work with us to take a look at all 9 of those tiers and all the different city pairs. And I think the bottom 4 or 5 of the tiers, there was a slight increase that they originally didn't want to give us that authority to ask, to accept that, but they worked with us and they did implement it, and they agreed to do it in a staged approach. So we could take a look at what happened with the first piece of that increase, give that some time to see the results. So anyway, like I said, I think with Amtrak, things in my 12 years, and particularly with this, it's been really good cooperation.
Good.
I think that's the important part too. It's not, when they first started this process over a year ago, they flipped the switch and said, this is what it's going to be. And we've worked with them. And now it's a monthly review and we look at it. They give us a ton of data, which is great. Our folks analyze it and they're open to letting the process evolve. So we optimize that ridership, which is something that they had not always been open. Cost recovery, we are slightly above what our goal was, and we continue to recover from that revenue issue in the summer, but we feel like we're in pretty good shape there. Obviously, the big outlier here was in FY21 with COVID. It was a big drop, but we're in good shape here. So ridership, the Secretary stole the thunder. December of 2023 was the first month in a long time where we did not set a record for the highest December ever. It was still a fantastic calendar year 2023. We had almost a 30% increase. If you look at those numbers, we missed the ridership record by about 700 passengers, which was really, really close. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that on New Year's Eve day, there were a number of issues on the Northeast Corridor. And so we had to cancel 4 different trains. But for those trains, we might have hit it. Of course, there are 30 other days where things happen, so we just don't know. But we were really close, and Amtrak continues to be a good partner for us in working to ensure that the onboard experience is one that links people. Here's the separation route by route. We were very close on Norfolk. We were very close on Newport News. Richmond, we were much above the previous year, and then Roanoke, we were down. As I said earlier, December 31st, we canceled some trains because of the Northeast Corridor, and 2 of those were Roanoke trains, and I'll just leave that there. That said, now we're excited about January. We can start setting new records, which is good. These I'll just do quickly. We've got the ridership and revenue per rider for each of the different routes. We track this very closely, and we work with Amtrak on everything from station dwell time to ensuring that the train's running smoothly. So pretty consistent to what we've seen over the course of the year and continue to expect strong ridership. And then that's that. So any questions on ridership or anything on the administrative front before I turn it over to Mike and capital project updates? Okay.
I'm not going to go through on the slide because we have a lot going on, and we're going to also cover any we can cover questions now or questions later when we go over the capital budget. So there's a couple of things I do want to point out, though. So we're going to go right to Longbridge. So we awarded contracts for Longbridge North back in December. The next day, we got a $729 million grant. The biggest bulk of that was so we can move forward with the Longbridge South. We're fully funded for Longbridge Suite. So this RFP is moving forward, and in early February, we are releasing the RFP. It's a 2-step process. We have the RFQ and the RFP, just like we did for Longbridge North, and we've talked to you about, but we have definitely not forgotten about Longbridge South. Very important as well. This is the span over the Potomac, including the pet bike bridge as well. And again, we'll be releasing to the shortlisted firms in early February, the first third of February, the RFP, the South package. That is design build. North was a progressive design build. There's a lot of similarities, but also some different processes to go through. We have already seen the Skanska Flatiron people up in our Northern Virginia office, and it's quickly gone from an office that wasn't even in existence to an office that is often full, which is a good problem to have. It's busy up there. The Skanska Flatiron people, as well as the Longbridge Partners, which is WSP led, are up there often. I'm up there once a week. TJ's up there once a week as well. We have a going back and forth offices quite often. It's exciting to see that activity up there. Alexandria Ford Track,
We do have our draft plans submitted from CSX. CSX is leading this one again. We're leading Longbridge, you're leading the Port Truck project. We're going to talk to you a little bit later about the King and Commonwealth bridges that we're also working closely with VPRA on. That's coming during the capital updates. We've talked about that with the board in the past. We're going to talk about that during Steve's capital updates. Franconia Lorcan third track, DJ already mentioned in the Franconia area, the tree felling that's happening, so we can do some geotech in the area. This project was also another one that you awarded in December to Flatiron Herzog. And again, we're seeing them in the office as well. That was the Franconia Lorcan third track, not been awarded yet, CSX project. The bypass was the Flatiron Herzog. Of course, those two projects have to be coordinated together. Other capital projects update. One of the projects I want to mention is the S-Line. We have a procurement out for 30% design for the S-Line all the way from literally just 2 blocks away from Main Street Station all the way down North Carolina border. That's for 30% design. Those submittals are due February 1st. So 6 packages, we've showed you the map before, but I haven't forgotten about that either. Up to 6 packages for the S-Line for 30% design. That's very important. So we can get cost estimates, things like the Appomattox River Bridge, which is also going to help Norfolk, such as the Ettrick Station, which is going to help a lot of the trains that move north and south as well. So we're excited to get those cost estimates back. And we've had some meetings with North Carolina and Amtrak and VPRA just in the past 2 weeks about moving the Richmond to Raleigh project forward. Other notes that I do want to mention that on the capital operating grants, a couple projects that are going to be complete this year, which will be the Arkandale and / Quantico project that CSX and VRE are leading. So we'll make sure everyone gets invites to that. I think we're looking at summertime for completion of the Quantico project. For those who have taken the train, you've seen the activity up at Quantico. They're building the pedestrian overpass and then laying another track in that area. Another big project that we're excited about and working with Newport News on, Newport News is the lead, is the Newport News Intermodal Center. That also, I think, in the same summer timeframe is scheduled to be open. That is moving up toward Bland Boulevard, a little closer to the airport. So another ribbon cutting that we're looking forward to inviting you all. Not sure if it'll be before or after our next board meeting, but roughly about that same time. Happy to answer any questions. Again, we have a lot going on throughout the Commonwealth. Just want to give those couple highlights. Yes.
So what's delaying Newport News? We were hearing it would be January when it opened, but basically it's complete, isn't it?
Yeah, if you look at the station, it looks complete. And I don't know if Oliver, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Oliver's been tracking it for us. I know Newport News is finishing up some work.
Yeah, I know it's their responsibility, but I just wonder what's pushing it back.
We can, if you know the answer, otherwise we'll get back to you.
The final track work is happening in early February. CSX is going across over from the main line of the peninsula stub over to the Newport News side of the track to actually get to the track. So we're doing that now. Then there'll be the testing and commissioning phase after that to make sure everything's good to go. So it's lined up for probably, would say, April or May at that first service start.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Oliver. Any other questions? And we're going to get to New River Valley. We're going to get New River Valley, King and Commonwealth, some other items. So that's why I want to go through this quickly, because we are going to cover some other important items during the capital budget.
Now Steve's going to talk revenue investment.
I'm just going to go through these real quick. It's pretty much good news. Our Commonwealth Rail Fund revenues are on track for the year. We're still doing really well as far as our investments of the balance funds that we've been able to collect, making a good return. And I want to spend a moment on this slide. I think everybody knows rates went up and rates have pretty much leveled off. And the expectation is in the next year to 2 years, rates will decline. So you see finally the note that I put that we expect the LGIPEM and the investments that were made a while ago, that when rates went up, there was a slight market value loss that wasn't realized. But now the EM has actually gotten back to where there's a gain now because the rates have declined and they were sitting at a 9-month rate. So they're invested in interest rates that are higher than today. So expect the same thing with the remaining government securities there, that we will not have a permanent loss. And the reason I'm taking a little time here is you'll see liquidity. So these are our three principles: preservation of our principal balance first, liquidity second, and then return is our third priority. Because we really aren't in the business of getting a bunch of investment income. We're in business to build capital projects for rail infrastructure. So liquidity is a big concern because we have these huge projects. We have a big balance of funding, and we're getting ready to take advantage of those higher rates and potentially invest in longer term investments, still within our 5-year window that's prescribed in the Investment of Public Funds Act and prescribed in our investment policy, but potentially locking down some of our funds for 2-3 years, 4 years, to lock in those 4.5% and 4% rates that we could get today, so that in a year when they're at 3%, we're actually earning more. So it's going to be a little bit of a transition. We got a new investment manager. So I did want to call that out, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later when we look at the investment policy. With that, this is the return slide. We're doing very well. The majority of our funds are in the LGIP, which has been probably the best spot to be for the last year when rates were going up. It's still over 5% return. And that's what's going to change. We're going to instead move to more longer term government security versus LGIP is like a 30-day maturity that they're constantly buying and selling. It's a state run fund. Finally, the last slide is our grant funding. We talked a lot about the $829 million. So with that, glad to take any questions.
So, Steve, excuse my ignorance, the Long Bridge grant that we received, that was from FRA, correct? Is that paid out in milestones, or we get that all up front?
I'm hopeful that it will be, I expect it to be reimbursement basis, but we haven't done.
Oh, we haven't negotiated that yet. Oh, okay.
Well, generally, federal programs are reimbursable. As we incur expenses, we bill the feds and they pay us back. But it's not like the federal highway side where they're based on construction phases. Go ahead.
I also want to note that some of the Fed-State partnership grants, especially the Northeast Corridor grants and some national grants, did have a phased funding approach. Our notification that Congress noticed did not have that. So for instance, the Susquehanna Bridge and the Frederick Douglass Tunnel, it was noted that, yes, they got money from the FY22, FY23 congressional program. They also have intent to award from the future years program. Our 729 did not have that. It's all from the current FY22, FY22 grant program that FRA released for that NOFO. Does that make sense? So FRA is moving towards somewhat of an FTA style FFTA for some larger projects. In case you or others were wondering, our notification did not have that. They call it a phased funding approach.
Yes.
Actually, during IIJ, we worked with our congressional delegation saying, that's a good idea because it's hard to plan in rail.
Yes.
When you only know if you're getting 50 million this year, 29 million.
Yes.
So I know how familiar you are with the FFTA program. Some projects do have the phased funding approach. The good news is ours doesn't have that. So even if Congress doesn't appropriate future years funds, we're still receiving our 729 million.
And let me just add to that, if I may. As soon as we sign the grant agreement with FRA, which is probably still a couple months away, that money becomes obligated, which is important because when they do reviews, they look for unobligated balances. That full 729 will be obligated when we sign our grant agreement. To answer your original question, though, we will draw it down as we have phase 2 expenses that bounce against that money.
So you will draw it down from whom?
From the FRA.
Okay, the FRA.
The FRA program is Fed-State partnership FRA. Multimodal grants, there's an asterisk in case you're wondering what that was. We also apply for the same Long Bridge and phase 2 projects. Since we're awarded, the asterisk shows that it was removed. That is a US DOT grant. The MPDG is the Office of the Secretary. And then they they allocate that down to whatever administration wins that award.
So Mike, is this a new program then, this federal-state
Federal
partnership?
state partnership is part of the IIJA.
I was going to ask you, as it came out of
It's
the.
brand new.
Yep, okay.
That's 36 billion nationwide, 24 billion for the Northeast corridor, 12 billion for the rest of the non-NEC states. Our 729 was out of that 12 billion, and we've already allocated, even though it's only 2 years funding, I think we're told 2/3 of the Fed state partnership money that came out of IIJA has already been either awarded or part of that phase funding approach I mentioned.
So is this a one-time shot, or can we go back to the same grant?
We can go back for a different set of projects.
Right, a different set.
They don't like it if our cost projects goes up for those phase two, we go back.
Right.
But if we were to apply for name a project, Richmond to Raleigh, name a project throughout the state, we are still discussing, we don't know what we're going to apply for next. We could, New River Valley, Norfolk, whatever the case might be, we could apply again for that state partnership.
So I thought this was a Christie's grant, but it's not. It's a brand new
Christie
grant.
was also bumped up during IIJA.
Yeah, right.
More than doubled in size, which is now where we got the bypass money.
Right, okay.
So Mike, these were the first Fed-state partnership awards
Right.
made under IIJA,
First
first round.
They combined 2 years worth of funding, the FRA did. It's the first round of funding. They'll put out another NOFO some point in time, notice of funding opportunity for Christie and Fed State in the next few months. Sometimes they wait on a full year's appropriations from Congress, sometimes they don't. So, but we're looking forward to another round of grants for Christie and Fed State partnership. Those are our two big ones.
Right.
That we're expecting, that we're already working with the chair and DJ and our stakeholders to determine what the next best application is.
And what is our partnership to Fed State Partners? What do we have to contribute to that? What is our contribution?
Our contribution is Steve, it was previously 75% of phases 1 and 2, ballpark, I know you have a slide coming up, was the state. So of the $4 billion or so in funding, Amtrak contributed 944, and the rest was from the state
So we
or local partners such as VPRA.
Took credit for the money that had already been allocated.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that.
I knew where you were going with that.
Yeah, just getting ready to say that. Okay, so.
We took credit for what we already had allocated.
Gotcha.
We don't have to match anything.
Commonwealth Rail funds,
That's exactly.
Commonwealth Rail funds, priority transportation funds.
So we already contributed, and that's just, we don't have to do any matching, anything. That's ours, correct?
Correct.
Right. Thank you.
The federal share got larger. That's what.
Yeah, yeah.
Still, it's still, I think.
That's really great. So
30%.
we're in the clear. I mean, really. Well, I didn't understand that. Thank you.
The only other, DJ kind of said this, now we've got almost $1 billion of federal grants, and we need to get them under contract. And so that's for us.
I didn't get that. I'm a little slow, but thank you. That's wonderful.
Anything else?
Mr. Petter? There you go.
That concludes the executive director's report with assistance from others. Any questions, Madam Chair or others?
That's right.
All right, next item on our agenda is the New River Valley update. Mr. McLaughlin?
I think it's easier to see over here when there's a screen. Trying to see it from.
I will start off with this one and just say we provided a briefing on New River Valley several months ago. The team has done an incredible job working with our consultant partners to get the work in the New River Valley corridor to 30%. We know a lot more now than we did a few months ago, and I think you will find that this information is really helpful and impactful, and we've got some decisions ahead of us as a board, not today, but in the future as we work to advance this project.
So I'm going to kick it off, and if I can ask Christine to come up. She is a resident NEPA expert, but we're excited to have Christine on board. Came out just over a year ago. Anniversary.
If I may, Christine didn't write NEPA. It's not because of Christine that we have to go through NEPA.
She helps us get through it.
Let's not shoot the messenger.
She knows all about the bats.
Some quick background. I also want to recognize that Director Reinhardt's also on, and she represents this area. So I'll pause for questions throughout. Just some quick background, though. We have been negotiating with Norfolk Southern, and Mike is one of the roles who actually was beginning those negotiations. And we came to an agreement in 2021. We had a press conference. And then in 2022, we finalized that agreement. It took a little longer than we expected. And that agreement, basically the agreement is second train to Roanoke, because there was only one train to Roanoke. So second train to Roanoke, and both would extend to New River Valley once the projects were complete. And we'll show you some of those in a minute. And the second train to Roanoke also happened the same day that the Norfolk train came online, and that is a picture from the folks in Roanoke with Mr. Rule in the front and center there. Bipartisan atmosphere.
Very hot day.
Nonpartisan atmosphere.
Yeah, so yeah, nonpartisan and very hot day.
But you can still tell we're excited to be out there. So with that, I'm going to hand the next few slides over to Christine.
And yes, thanks, Mike. I like DJ said, I didn't write NEPA, but I'm here to help us navigate it and navigate the whole federal planning process. And I just wanted to talk to everybody about a new program from FRA. It's the Corridor ID process. And what it is the new program from FRA to basically line up corridors and to get in a project pipeline. And that's what we're doing. We're playing within the rules. We're getting in the project pipeline for New River Valley as well as all of our other projects. So where does the corridor ID process fit for New River Valley? We believe that the New River Valley, as an extension of the Northeast service from Roanoke, we're in that project development phase, the yellow arrow there, rather than way back in the systems planning phase. We're not starting from the beginning, we're starting in the middle. And because of that, I think that we're going to get to our project sooner. And I'll take you through the steps of where we are.
If I can, to Ms. Shu's point, Corridor ID is part of the IAJ as well.
Okay.
So it was new in IAJ. It took them about a year or so to get it up and running, Corridor ID. And there are grants associated with Corridor ID.
Right, and so DRPT applied for the corridor from Washington DC to and through Bristol and was selected for the program. And so that includes the extension or covers the same corridor as the extension to
Washington to Charlotte was a joint with us in North Carolina. So even if you're already much further along, there's another example of obviously Washington and Richmond's very far along. FRA is willing to work with us in the process.
So this is all planning money, right? This program, this grant program? Thank you.
That's a question, Jen. Did we get $500,000 then?
We got $500,000. For this corridor, we got $500,000. DRPT also applied for the Commonwealth corridor, which is in east-west, Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads. Across the state, we got $500,000 for that corridor as well. And it just puts us at the very, very beginning of that purple arrow on corridors like the Commonwealth corridor where there's not a lot of work done to be at the very, very beginning and start from a early planning perspective to develop those corridors. This is very different, but we have to follow, we now have a defined process to follow, planner by trade. Like my defined process, it makes me happy because I know what my pipeline is. And so Christine.
Exactly. We're just making sure we're getting into the project pipeline and to be able to apply for those future federal funds later on. So specifically on the New River Valley, the project development process, it always starts with an idea. Our idea was, let's get new service out to the New River Valley. How are we going to do that? We started with the feasibility study as the first step in the process. Then now we took another look at preliminary engineering. We're going to talk about that a little later. And then we'll move on to 60% design. We also need to do NEPA to be eligible for more federal funding and to make sure all of our environmental impacts are captured. And then, of course, moving on to final design and construction. So we're kind of in the middle there between feasibility and, well, we're at preliminary engineering now. We're going to move into the NEPA phase combined with the 60% phase and then move the project forward on to final. Let me talk a little bit about NEPA. Again, don't shoot the messenger. NEPA is a federal law requiring agencies to consider any environmental impacts and actions. And we have to evaluate alternatives for any of those actions that we take. And it also, we have to look at the public decision, a public input into the decision-making process. So NEPA, I always tell people it's not a document, it's not a binder full of things. It's a process, and we have to follow that process. So why do we, VPRA, need to do the NEPA process if it's a federal project? Well, one, for federal funding. We have some federal funding currently on New River Valley, or if we want future federal funding. And then two, based on our design and 30% that we've looked at, we've also done environmental screening. We think we're going to need an Army Corps of Engineer permit. And then that takes us into the NEPA realm as well. We also have some potential environmental impacts for cultural, historic, and endangered species. Back to those bats, they are out there and they're around. But, oh yes. Oh, I thought there was another slide. Okay, we're good. Let's talk about the feasibility study. The feasibility study was that first step. And what it looked at was, where can we site a station? And that's what these were. Looked at various sites in the New River Valley. However, it didn't look comprehensive at the entire route. It didn't look at the infrastructure that we needed to get to the valley. It just looked at a station site location and how to get to the station itself. So we're focused on getting the rail to New River Valley. And that's what we're doing.
If I can real quick, in case you're wondering what that blue circle on the bottom is, that's Norfolk Southern's main line. They have about 4 times the amount of traffic on that main line as they do on the Virginia line. They indicated during negotiations that they would very much prefer us to go on the Virginia line to the New River Valley. That is their main line up and down to the south of southern U.S. So while that was on there, we had to explain, because there was a lot of questions about that from River Valley. That was a site that some people there preferred on their main line. We had explained this within the feasibility study that our agreement with Norfolk Southern was to get to New River Valley on the Virginia line, which is the parallel line, as you can see, just a couple miles more.
Again, I mentioned the NEPA and again, why we need to do NEPA. We got that 2 million earmark. So that kind of triggers us into the NEPA phase. And again, our preliminary desktop reviews showed us that we're going to need an Army Corps of Engineers permit. And you see all that water, that's along the rail right of way. We got to look at that. We need to understand where it's going, and we may have to divert. We may have to do some things. Our engineering team is looking at how to minimize and reduce impacts, but again, we'll still need that. So both actions trigger us into that NEPA process. Action also with NEPA, we need to do a purpose and need statement. I won't read everything up here, but basically it tells us what the purpose of the project is and describes what we're going to do and the why, and the how to get to the project. So we're saying the purpose is to increase mobility options, and then why we're going to look at those regional mobility options because 81's at capacity. So what do? We're going to give another option for travelers besides 81 to go on alongside the rail. Any questions? And again, let me state that we're showing you this purpose and needs statement. It's a draft. We're going to put that out to the public on the 29th. We're going out to the New River Valley area for a public meeting, and this will be out to the public at that time. We have more steps to do in planning. We are doing a service development plan. We are looking at what it will take, maybe some operations, and then also with the engineering efforts combined. We're looking at a spring 2024 this year to accomplish that. We're in the middle of our pre-NEPA, that's that purpose and needs statement that I talked about, and looking at alternatives, which we're going to show you in just a moment. We're getting that done this month. We're going to go out to the public again at the end of the month on the 29th, and then we'll go back out to them again. This is going to be a continual cycle of reaching out to the public, keeping them informed, getting their feedback, and do iterations as we go. And then after the alternatives analysis, we're going to launch into the full-on NEPA. And at that time, we're going to take one of those 3 alternatives that you'll see in a moment, narrow it down to one, compare it to a no build, and then talk about all the environmental impacts. That should take about a year. Again, more public outreach, more stakeholder outreach, and then we should be done with NEPA. And while we're doing NEPA, we're going to take the design further so we can keep refining as we go. So we're not losing any time.
And if we can, I'd like to acknowledge a lot of people are going to be out there with us. We also have the honor of being in front of you today, but as we said before, we're not doing this ourselves. heck, we're just lucky enough to be up here. Jenna, Jerica, Colin, Oliver, John and Faya might be out there at times too. They're the folks that are going out there and make a lot of it happen, from the event to the talking points. And we're excited to have this team on board because they force folks like DJ and I to drill down on our facts and our figures and our talking points. So we could have a whole session just on public engagement, but we know time is short and we're not going to have that. But I'm trying not to minimize the public engagement. There'll be another slide on it later on, but really want to acknowledge the great work these folks do.
And permitting. Last but not least, I mentioned the core permit. So while we're out there on the 29th, we're going to meet with the core reps and we're going to go out to the site. We're going to visit it. We're going to kind of talk through some things. And that's half of my job, is getting the right people in the right room or the right site to talk through things. We're also working with the core to get a part-time staff member devoted to our projects. This will be big, not only for New River Valley, but for our RF&P projects, because if we can talk directly one-on-one with the same staff member every single time, then they understand us, they understand our projects, and we can establish a better working relationship rather than a new person just reviewing our permit and not knowing all the background details. So we're looking forward to that coordination with the core. We're also, again, while we're bringing the core in early on the NEPA process, is we're trying to establish a modified merger process. VDOT does this a lot, and they do it all the time. They bring in the core during the NEPA phase. Core says, okay, this is a good project, we support it. So that way, when we get to the permitting at the end, the Army Corps of Engineers can't say, well, you can't get a permit, so you can't build. And that would be the worst case scenario. So bringing them in early will help us mitigate any environmental missteps or anything in the process. So I will stop here. I'll take any questions before I turn it over to Mike and talk engineering.
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the body of water that you're going over?
Forget
Slate
which
Branch.
I think
I think that's a Slate Branch. It's like a creek.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good question. There are bodies of water that have water in them all year long.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of them. That is one of the bodies of water. You'll see on a Google Maps. If you go to Google Map, it'll just show you the Slate Branch. If I have that wrong, they're nodding, so I got this one right. Good lucky once in a while. And some of the other bodies of water you see alongside the tracks, that could be, they're often there. They also could be higher or lower based on the runoff from the rain. Or obviously we're dealing with mountains, so you have a lot of runoff. And see the Rona person nodding, he understands all about that. But this body of water right here, and this picture is taken from the Huckleberry Trail, which for those out there, it's a trail that goes north and south from Virginia Tech to Christiansburg, crosses over the V line. And there's a decent amount of water on west of and this is west of the tunnel. Western Merrimack Tunnel. We're going to get more into that here in a minute.
All right, before we move on, I want to, Ms. Reinhardt has a question. She's remote, so I want to give her an opportunity to ask that. So Beth, can you go ahead?
Yes, good morning, Chairman DeBrule, and thank you all for the opportunity to participate remotely. Apologize I couldn't be there in person. Just a big picture comment regarding the Southwest enhancement and extensions. I know that looking big picture for the future potential for 2 and 3 Bristol, there are a lot of implications that involve this New River Valley, whether it's the site selection, a lot of the decisions that are being made. And I want to make sure that we do our best to mitigate things that could potentially make it extremely difficult beyond what is already difficult to get it 2 and 3 Bristol, so that when we make choices around that New River Valley site selection, that we keep in mind whatever choices we make, how they impact that potential for 2 and 3 Bristol, as it is important that we consider all Virginians' ability to have access to passenger rail. And just for what it's worth, I was on a call with our Tennessee legislators this morning, and they are actually they had legislation to develop a specific passenger rail division within TDOT, taking their kudos and vision from you all and what you all have done so very well with Virginia Passenger Rail here. So I hope that we just keep that in mind moving forward and appreciate all the hard work that's being done. This is not an easy lift by any means. And also understanding I'm new to this, so I'm still learning.
Beth?
Any other questions on NEPA?
I just asked one question, and I know you didn't write NEPA, so I just want to put that disclaimer out there. Just an observation. I think the co-sharing of the Corps of Engineer staffing personnel, I think that's an excellent idea. Former congressional life, I used to beat my head against the wall dealing with our Fort Worth district office, so I think that is a great idea. Just one for my own edification, could you, given the complexity of something like this, can you enlighten me on how and where categorical exclusions play into this process?
We've got a lot of water, we've got a lot of issues that because we're doing the 30% design, we're now looking at. We also have the bats, we have I could go through the laundry list of things that we're looking at, but primarily it's engineering wise, it's a tough site. It's hard for all of the infrastructure, but as well with the narrow corridors, all of the water tends to funnel towards the rail line. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're going to need that court permit. Because all of the water seems to want to run alongside the rail. Yeah. And it acts as a stream next to everything. And it's in lower bodies of water and lower lying areas. So we're getting there. Again, that's why I think we're going to need the court permit.
And with regard to Director Hall's question, for those who aren't familiar, there's various levels of environmental studies you need to go through. But category exclusion it should be the easiest one. Then you move to environmental environmental assessment, and then environmental impact statement. Some of you are nodding your head, some of you know this. Category exclusion, if you were staying completely in the right of way and not having any impacts outside of right of way, I know there's probably exceptions, but the rule of thumb is that the category exclusion is Cat X, as people call it, it's a lot easier. Yeah. But you're listing that we're adding some elements here that are likely maybe to move us from a CE to an EA. We're not presupposing the NEPA, but that is what I think what we're looking at.
I appreciate that. What we're leaning towards.
Yeah, no, I got it. Thank you.
What the FRA will make us lean toward. It's not necessarily our decision.
Conservative.
Just a follow on to that question, just a little bit. I guess it's good that you're leaning towards an EA and not a full-blown EIS, which could impose tremendous complexities as well as time, where we've got some tight timelines. Is there any sense that the EA will be sufficient enough so, I don't want to say that, so that the project is not hijacked by the need for an EIS, which?
I believe so. While I indicated there are environmental things that we need to look at, I think there are ways we can mitigate through altering the design or reducing impacts and narrowing the corridor. So I think we are good on an EA. There could be other reasons to go push us into an EIS. It could be community engagement that might go awry. It could be the aspect. But again, we're working with the community, we're reaching out, we're going to do all of that to limit our exposure and risk to elevate the EIS.
I know a lot of this, more of a comment than a question, in terms of community engagement and those individual responses to public comment. Much of it a marketing exercise to emphasize the benefit to the community in order to also not get everybody all excited and up in arms about what's being done to my community.
Correct. And that is one, our purpose and need statement. And back to that element was we wanted to be community-wide, reflective of the community, looking it out to them. We think that the purpose is to provide more options, improve mobility in the area. Maybe we missed something And that's why we're going to take that out to the community and ask them, did we get it right? If not, we'll take their considerations and could probably amend that draft purpose and need statement. And then that sets the tone for, again, why we're doing the project. And if the community says you forgot something, we're happy to include it, for sure.
It's definitely a milestone when you clear that NEPA hurdle, whether it be CE, EA, EIS. When we cleared the EIS for DC to Richmond, that was a big deal about, I guess, 2019 probably. And for Long Beach, 2020, both of them in September. I remember that. Those are big deals. So clearing this NEPA process, and I too feel comfortable it'll be an EA. I don't think this rises to the level of an EIS. But still, a very good question we have to keep an eye on. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, and some of this is some background. We did brief you last spring, I believe it was, on New River Valley. So if I go too fast, please stop me and ask questions. Real quick, there are two things. There are two parties involved in getting New River Valley. The VPRA-led improvements, which we're going to go into detail about here in a minute. Tunnel, track, platform, so on and so forth. Then there's the Norfolk Southern-led improvements. Yes?
Who owns the tunnels?
We do.
Okay.
So the 28 miles we purchased, that was completed at end of June. That was part of that finalized agreements. Norfolk Southern owns from the Roanoke Yard to Salem Crossover, so about 6 miles or so. They would have to, part of our agreement was we don't want to get caught in their yard. So we are part of there's some funding to, Norfolk Southern does, to make improvements to the yard. So we have some dedicated tracks to get out of the yard. It's very important to us because yards can really slow up trains. We know that on the DC to Richmond corridor. So we'll be at least 40 miles per hour getting out of their yard. They're moving forward with their work. We do get updates from them. There's also another project for the North Knoxville to Calvert. That's a double track for adding south of Manassas. That's not necessarily to be done to get to the New River Valley. But that's just, I do want to mention that project is also part of the agreement. They'll also be doing positive train control. 28 miles we own is just the middle part of a much longer Norfolk Southern stretch. So it makes sense for them to do the signaling and do the positive train control. So those are the elements we need to do to get to New River Valley. Procurement milestones we mentioned. So after we completed the agreements with Norfolk Southern, we quickly went to our planning and engineering benches. We secured STV, a well-known engineering firm, brought them on board, and then we got to a certain level of design, and we moved forward into the last summer for 30% design. And we talked to you about, and we're bringing you the results of that today. Again, they did give us some documents, and we've been working through that. We said it'll finalize in mid-December, just in time for this meeting. And they do include updated costs and schedules that we're going to get into here in a minute. So we got our nomenclature right, and so we got our maps right. Alternative A is the Cinnabar Road site. That is east of the tunnel. Map on the right might not be clear in this room. That is still central New River Valley. It's just east of the tunnel, of the Merrimack Tunnel, between Blacksburg and Christiansburg. Alternative A is Cinnabar only. That would mean a platform, layover facility, parking lot, so on and so forth, at Cinnabar. Alternative B is the only station would be at the mall. Their layover facility is always going to remain in Cinnabar for all these options. The alternative B is the mall will be the mall site with the platform, and you would have to go through the tunnel for that. Alternative C is if you wanted to get to New River Valley quicker and have a temporary site at Cinnabar, you'd have a temporary site at Cinnabar with a final destination site at the mall. And we're going to get into more detail here in a minute. So the Cinnabar Road site, cost estimates come out to $366 million. Step by our New River Valley budget of 2024 was a $166 million. Our 2025 budget that Steve's going to present here soon is including the lowest cost option. We do have that money available. So $366 million to get to the Cinnabar site. And that is with the service start in 2028. I do want to mention though that, as Christine mentioned, the Army Corps of Engineers, there's less water east of the tunnel. So there's a chance the Army Corps permit could be much quicker. West of the tunnel, the Slate Branch Creek, as I mentioned, when you combine the east of the tunnel, west of the tunnel, there's so much water with those two combined to get to the mall. It's going to be a lot longer Army Corps process. to go through the tunnel to get west of the tunnel. So this timeline, if things went well, but I've learned over the years, and I've been involved in this from the beginning, so I share some blame in allowing us to put out some cost estimates and some dates. DJ will never, ever let me do that again, that are not reasonable and based on 30%. We did that at 0% design before back in 2021. These estimates are based on 30% design, and it is possible that service date could speed up. Alternative B, which is the mall only, again, the layover at Cinnabar, $785 million. And that Army Corps, we know the length of that permit. That would be one of the longer permits. And you can also see here, so the layover site, just east of the tunnel goes under 460. So 460 is kind of the dividing line of east and west New River Valley, and there's Christenburg on the south and Virginia Tech and Blacksburg on the north. We would have to build a connector track. We're going to go, after you get through the tunnel, we have to build a connector track. We also saw in some previous slides, by the way, slate tunnel. That is only 800 feet long. That is much lower in cost. The tunnel, the Merrimack Tunnel, is a mile long, and it is one of the narrowest in the Commonwealth. Nothing is as long and narrow in the Commonwealth that any train runs through as the Merrimack Tunnel.
And Mike, how old is the Merrimack Tunnel?
1908. So it's pre World War I.
And Mike, could you, something we touched on briefly, I think with Finance Committee, one of these gets us to Bristol and one of them doesn't?
No, that's not. It's both. Getting from Roanoke to New River Valley is the next step to get to Bristol. They're both on the route to Bristol that we have negotiated. Well, as we negotiate with Norfolk Southern, they want to stay out their main line. They want to stay the V line. The connector track there, that connector track, that track does not exist now. That is Greenfield. That would connect to what we call the Blacksburg branch that really just serves a courting site, which is just north of the mall, just a couple trains a day. We would have to add, I think, 3,000 feet. We're getting this slide coming up of connector track to connect to that Blacksburg branch, which goes south in a kind of south to southeastern direction to get to Norfolk Southern's main line.
Which gets to Bristol.
To Bristol. The only way to get
to Bristol is through the tunnel and building that connector track.
Okay, yeah, that's what
I'm trying to get.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for finishing up there.
Sorry.
But good question.
Condition of the tunnel, is it going to have to be widened or?
Yes.
Okay, so that's part of the
Yes.
package.
It's 14 feet. We have a slide in that coming up.
So it needs a connection and it needs a new tunnel.
Yes. And this is what we call the hybrid with the temporary at Cinnabar, and then still going through the tunnel and the connector track to River Valley Mall. That cost $951 million. In case you're wondering some of the costs, this is again a mountainous area, a lot of grading, a lot of retaining walls. Those are some of the highest elements of cost out here. In case you're wondering, while I have this up here, the feasibility studies at one point did not look east of Cinnabar because the grade is such that we didn't think it met Amtrak's minimum. However, during the 30% design, we reached out to Amtrak and met with them. And they said, actually, you can make it work there. You just need to do sufficient grading and retaining walls. And because there's not much of a population on that, right at that section, it is relatively a straightaway. We thought that would be the best location for a layover site and possibly a platform site as well. This is just a summary of what you just seen, kind of put it all on one page. Sometimes we've been in meetings and get to the point and I go right to this, but thank you for indulging me and letting me get through some of these estimates. Do want to also point out that the Cinnabar site does include parking and an access road, and you're kind of building that on the side of a hill. Again, that grading cost is high there. So all these include parking. None of them include a station facility, station house. Our rail plan that we've had in the books for quite a few years now, the Commonwealth gets you there in the track and gets you in the platform, and then we work with locals to identify a suitable site for a station house, so locals will have a station house if they want one. There's plenty of places in the Commonwealth, a lot of BRE stations that have a canopy with no station house. Roanoke right now does not have as the director of Roanoke's nodding his head, does not have a station house. I think they're working on it. And we're happy to work with them, and we actually, I believe, are clearing environmentally space for the station house, so they don't have to go through the CEA process that we mentioned. So want to do that all in one fell swoop. But the tunnel, Director Drake asked about it. Let's see how narrow it is. There are some sections of the tunnel that are so narrow that it'll be difficult for passengers to even get out if something happens, even get out of the train and then walk along it. So one of the things we're doing is we'll be notching along the kind of the base of the tunnel, so there'll be an egress on the ground. I'm going to flip around to right here. Also going to be adding some vertical shafts, a 15-story and a 20-story vertical shaft to get up. Because if that pathway is blocked on the ground, people need to be able to get out. And there's been plenty of tunnel incidents in Washington, D.C., and Chicago, New York, and other places that you want people to be able to get out. Smoke inhalation especially is a major concern. That's often the driver of fatalities. If there is a fire, it's often smoke inhalation. So hence why we're also adding fans. The graphic on the left shows you the fans. If you've been through, as we know, plenty of people in the Hampton Roads area, you go through the tunnels in Hampton Roads and you see the fans in the tunnels in the Hampton Roads area.
So the tunnel now, is it only or mainly used by freight or? Only
by freight. There's only about 6 freight trains a day and night going through there based on the FRA.
Once you introduce people into the trains that you've got to worry about.
We're introducing people, we want everyone to be able to get out and everyone to get to safety. And this is an old tunnel, and for new service, it is NFPA 130 is recommended. When I worked at a transit agency in Chicago, if you're building anything new, you build an NFPA 130. That is the industry standard, and that's the standard we'll be following here. So in case you're wondering how we come up with 2 shafts to get out, we're following the NFPA standard. Why we're coming up with the fans, we're following the NFPA 130 standard. And those who are involved in transit definitely understand NFPA 130. Transit agencies that is used quite often. I did skip around a little bit because there was questions about the width of the tunnel. So I'm going to go back a little bit. We're also going to talk about the connecting track a little bit here too. You want to point out during 30% of design, we did some boring samples. Unfortunately, the samples for the Merrimack Tunnel were not great. They actually were very poor. What does that mean for us? That means the cost of the shafts could be more expensive. If you're not building in hard rock, it's going to be more expensive. So that is one of the cost drivers as well. The Slate Hill Tunnel, which is not where the Slate Branch Creek is, it's a little further east, 800 feet long. That is much better rock. But again, that's only 800 feet long, and Amtrak train is 850 feet. So thereabouts. So Slate Branch, again, not much of a cost driver there because it's so much shorter. Again, mile long from Merrimack, only 800 feet for Slate Branch. We actually have one of these boxes upstairs. Oliver brought it in from the boring samples. And it looks and feels like coal, even though it's not. The connecting track. This is, again, looking west, coming just through the tunnel. And you would have to take a left-hand turn, go south to the connecting track to get to the mall, about 3,000 feet of a long connection. When we briefed you last year, we thought it would be 300,000 cubic yards to be removed, double that, 600. Again, another cost driver, 62,000 dump trucks worth. And that's when I'll be turning to the engagement team to talk to the people in Newer Valley whose trucks are going through. Jerica and Jenna, please take the floor if that question ever comes up in the future, but no, kidding. Because that's a lot of dump trucks going through. Hopefully not, we don't know the route yet. We haven't gotten that far. That's a lot of dump trucks and something to keep in mind. I talked about this a little bit forward. So next steps. We're at the end here. We're going to progress from 30% into 60%. We already have our writing our scopes already written. We'll be putting that out in February to our engineering bench. We have 2 benches, a planning bench and an engineering bench. This will be put out to our not to our engineering bench. We have to put out a RFP because the cost, the procurement director in the corner, the cost is too high for the engineering bench. We have to put out as an RFP. We have a certain cap based on our enabling law. So we'll be putting it out as an RFP in February. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the V-line grade crossing safety study. In case you're wondering what that means, a few of us have high-railed it. There is a lot of, the public crossings all have gates, at least 2 gates. There's a lot of private crossings that might provide a farm, and also we see farm equipment out there, we see playground equipment. We want to go out and make sure that folks that are aware of trains are going to be coming. The new aero trains, which we've talked about in the past, are going to be much quieter. I mean, the current Amtrak trains are much quieter than a freight train, but people out there are used to hearing a freight train coming up proverbial mile away. And it's true. Whereas the new Amtrak trains coming are to be much quieter. And we don't want, of course, safety is the number one priority. We start this off with the safety briefing. Safety is our number one priority. So we're going to be doing a study to determine if it could just be some simple crosswalk lights that flash. It could be, hey, if you have a crossing here, but you also can get to the main road over there, we'll work with you and see what can be done. We don't think this will be I'm got DJ in my head, don't say what the cost might be. But we're gonna
You can say when you know. What? You can say it when you know what the cost is.
I know what the cost is. We'll be doing a planning study internally to get ready for the FRA's Grade Crossing Safety Elimination Program, also new to IIJA. So if we ask for a few $1 million, we need to know what to ask for. We need to know what 30%, if not 30%, 15% design costs are. If we have costs through design costs, or if they're just as simple as, again, we can get some industry standards from the freight road industry. What does it cost to put in a rural area? You might not see gates, but you might see a crosswalk that the light might go off. Some kind of warning system, I think, would be good. Again, already recognized the community engagement team. These folks have been great. They've been keeping us on our toes, making sure we're trying to be as sharp as we can. Darren already mentioned, I think, and Jerica's pointing to Jenna saying, saw Jenna. Actually, Thursday, we're going to be out speaking to New River Valley Station Authority. And next week, we have our own open house that's part of the FRA's official open house, almost open house with the capital O, capital H, because it's part of the official FRA NEPA process. And that's just the beginning. And in fact, we've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. They know Colin, and they're trying to get him buy real estate out there. He's out there. We're going to continue to be out there. Just because we have these 2 meeting dates now yet doesn't mean we're not going to be out there. We're going to be out there continually throughout the life of this process. So I know I threw a lot at you. You had some great questions, but any more questions?
I'm trying to figure out, again, the safety issue of getting people off the train and out of the tunnel. So the tunnel is 6 feet, or 6 feet, 6 miles long?
1 mile long. 1 mile. 1 mile long.
Okay, 1 mile.
5,200 feet, 1 mile long, the tunnel is. I believe, we looked the longest tunnel in Virginia. And it's only 14 feet wide, and some sections actually bows in. So it's hard to get out of the train. So we take safety very, very seriously.
So you're talking about trying to widen the tunnel inside?
Along the base. Yeah, you notch along the base so people have a way to walk out. Either walk all the way out or walk to the egress shafts.
Or
because there's going to be 2 of them.
Climb up a shaft?
Or climb up a shaft, 15 and 20 stories.
Oh my God.
As you're up about a strength.
20, it's going to remain single track?
Do it, Sharon.
Just 20 stories, he said.
Single track, yeah. We don't want to have to.
20 stories, it says 20
We don't have the 30% design for building a new tunnel, so. It'll be a single track, and we think our engineers can notch along the base.
This entire connection, will the whole thing be a single track?
Yes. The whole way from Salem to New River Valley single track, except for a couple small sidings, not the 3 mile length with the freight rail. A couple sidings might be a mile
So it's
long.
very underused.
Yeah, this is the secondary line for Norfolk Southern. Okay. And checking the FRA track charts and how many trains through grade crossing. It's about 6 trains a day here. Their main line has 4 times that.
Those are
and that's just certain days are pretty warm. They often use this for a lot of times going east because they go downhill coming out of the tunnel.
So to that end, Mike, if Virginia makes these investments to upgrade the track, put on the connector, will the freights continue? Is it NS that's using it? Will they continue to have access to it?
Freights will continue using it. They pay some maintenance fee. Right. That's in our agreement. So they go over the tracks, they pay some maintenance fee.
And just curiously, are we keeping the elected officials, local, state, and federal, keeping them informed of this?
Morgan Griffith is the local congressman. He's appeared at a couple of our events. He's attending some of the meetings. We're keeping them up to date. Jenna's done a great job spotting a couple months ago, and people already know we're down there.
Okay, good.
So.
And we did pre-brief secretary and then a couple of the locals before today. So this is,
the local officials as well down there.
Yes, and some of the local officials are attending the meeting on the 25th.
Oh, good.
Like the mayor, Commissioners Board, a lot of other local officials are attending that meeting.
We have had open dialogue for years now, Mike, right?
Oh, yeah. Mayor Christiansburg was at the May 2021 event. I think it was the MC, in fact, that they held at the mall site. The Mayor Christiansburg, and plus other local officials. So we've been continuing to meet with them. We'll continue to do so.
I want to give Ms. Reinhardt an opportunity. She had put a comment in the chat. I just wanted to give her the opportunity to ask any questions that she may have since she represents this area.
Yes,
ahead,
thank
Beth.
you. Thank you so much. And not trying to beat a dead horse here, but you know, I'm looking at it, of course, through the lens from the Southwest to the Northeast. And the concern that I've heard from many is once we make a decision about which site in Christiansburg will be that site through the feasibility study and the actions of this board, have we looked at how that changes the potential impact for cost to extension to and through Bristol? And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't have us look at that. And sometimes it's a give and take, I understand, but just making sure that we consider that too, because it's not a dead end in Christiansburg, in our opinion, but hopefully a continued enhancement and expansion to Bristol.
This study looks at getting to New River Valley. DRPT will be looking at the Bristol option with the Corridor Identification Program, correct?
Yes, correct. So Beth, for this work, it's really a question of how far do we go and what funding do we have available, and that's what VPRA will determine. And we're going to take both options, east of the tunnel and west of the tunnel, to 60% design, so that we can give this board as much information as they can have to make an informed decision about how this board allocates money to provide that service to the New River Valley. As I mentioned earlier, DRPT applied for the Corridor Identification Program. We received a $500,000 grant that will enable us to continue to develop what it takes to get through the New River Valley to Bristol. That work and what it takes to continue on resides with DRPT, responsible for the long-range planning of rail in the Commonwealth. So we'll continue to have that dialogue. We'll update this board as that gets underway, or that process gets underway. Duly noted. And that's why I made sure earlier we said you don't get to Bristol unless you go through the Merrimack Tunnel and make that connection at the mall.
So alternative A doesn't get you to the mall.
No.
Doesn't.
Okay.
So it stops short of where you want to go.
Yes. That gets, and this is back to Ms. Bashu's comment. This is why the coordination with the local officials is so important. We can get them service quicker if we focus on this site that's east of the tunnel. If we work towards the mall site, it's going to take longer and it's going to take more resources than we have available to us. And so that's part of what has to be evaluated through this NEPA work, through the continued planning work, and the development of those plans to 60%.
When do we factor in the estimated ridership difference?
Is there a difference in ridership?
I should note that of the difference in location is minimal. The amount of time it takes in a car to travel from Radford University, which is just west of here, or Virginia Tech or Christiansburg Town Hall is the same to both locations, give or take 1 minute. So that ridership difference remains to be determined, but I just gave you an idea of the difference in distance. So I'm not sure how much more I should note that there is a Huckleberry Trail. There is a community college at the mall, a mall site. But if you're coming off of 460, for one, you're taking a left, for one, you're taking a right.
So there's roughly almost these numbers right, $600 million difference in cost. And there's virtually no difference in ridership.
We have not done an official ridership study. We did one for the longer term Norfolk Southern deal, but we have not done a ridership study that the industry often does, the difference between the two. I think when you talk to one of the local officials, they'll point out that the Cinnabar site, there's nothing developed around there. The mall site is more developed. That's one of the considerations that just need to keep in mind. Looks like Christine wanted to.
So I was going to say, we can look at that in the alternatives analysis, and that's probably a very good suggestion to do that at that stage.
I think my staff's trying to say something back behind.
If I could, just from the engineering perspective, let Christine kind of confirm this, but as far as the alternatives that we are looking at developing for like the NEPA process, none of what we are proposing precludes expansion to Bristol. That is at least the understanding from our studies, and I'll defer to Christine to confirm that.
No, that's correct. Exactly. We are simply providing service to New River Valley. It doesn't preclude getting to Bristol. It would just be at a later phase of the Bristol.
I would imagine that the local officials are looking at it, if you stop it on the east side, they may never get Bristol. If you come through, there's a commitment that we are going to go to Bristol. Because you're right, it's a lot of money. So I think that's not something within your rail study, but it's just reality.
I guess my point is it's not a simple decision. If you're going to go all the way to Bristol, if that's the goal, that ought to be the driving factor. But if there's no difference in ridership, and for $590 million or whatever the difference in cost is, you could buy a fleet of helicopters and fly people through.
A shuttle.
I'm just written from one. I got to take that helicopter if you got it.
So Ms. Reinhardt has a question.
Shuttle service or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll let her. Beth, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Thank you again. And to the points made, I understand that this is a totally separate issue than the corridor ID feasibility study, but I still, again, think that if we don't consider down the line, no pun intended, what the site selection choice could mean to further expansion to and through Bristol, I think we're remiss not to look at the big picture, understanding there's separate decisions to be made, and that's not what we're talking about here. But if we make a decision that makes it prohibitive to ever get it to Bristol due to a cost based on the site selection, I think we would be remiss not to at least have that conversation.
So I want to be clear and make sure that you heard what Fayed said earlier. None of these alternatives preclude further extension to Bristol. We're not considering anything that would preclude that in the future. I do think we've learned a lot through this process of how much it's going to take to improve some of the infrastructure and some of the very preliminary work that was done on the extension to Bristol and estimates and cost and time. I think we've learned over the past couple of years that we were highly optimistic on the cost side of what it takes to make this happen. And so I think, Beth, to your point, that's going to inform that corridor ID work that DRPT is going to do, looking at continuation to Bristol. We're going to have better information going in to be able to have a clearer conversation about what it's going to take to get there.
There's as you point out, single track in the tunnel, most of the single track from River Valley to Bristol. So, yes.
Christine, this is for you. So the NEPA is from Salem crossovers?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Where the blue and the orange meet, Salem crossovers. That's what we own.
Right, I know that. So it goes from there to where's the ending? Where's the terminus? So it doesn't.
This would be the connector track, and that's what we own to.
Right. Okay. So does it include the connector tract? The NEPA process?
We will.
We will.
We will. Let me back up. Our alternatives analysis will take into account all of that. We'll narrow down before we get to the NEPA process. Officially, when we start NEPA, it will be one of those alternatives.
Right, exactly. Okay, yeah, no, I get that.
And that is twofold for that reason. One, the feds have a a new guidance that EAs, they need to accomplish within 1 year. And if we want to get all of that done within 1 year, it's best to have one option and then compare to a no bill.
Right, I get that. So I just want to make sure that's 28 miles.
From Salem crossovers to milepost 279 is 20 miles.
Okay, 28 or 20?
28.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
A milepost 250 and change, almost 251 to milepost 279.
Okay.
So this track, when it's built, it's not going to be a high-speed rail corridor. It's going to be regular track. So, and it's already there. You're not expanding, so it's probably very little issues of eminent domain.
We're not expanding except where you're building the labor facility and the platform.
So maybe in those areas, okay.
There'll be some
But it's
small-
not like the S line, which is,
No.
okay.
No, you're right. You're mostly, that's why we come back to Ms. Moses Ned's question earlier about CE, EA, EIS. The vast majority of this is within the rail right of way.
Okay, good.
When you're building a platform and labor facility, you will have some parts of outside the right of way, but I'm not even aware of any buildings we're taking. I mean, in case you're wondering about what kind of right of way, I don't think it's any buildings or any facilities, anything like that nature. It's not trying to minimize the landscape around there, but sometimes you think about you're taking a building. We're not doing, nothing like that would happen. That's why we think it'll be a EA rather than an EIS.
Michael, question, I wish that map went further. If, thinking bigger picture, we corridor ID plan, potentially go to Bristol. If we don't go to Bristol, where do we go? Where's the Virginian line go besides just New River Valley?
It goes out to Radford, and it's an old coal mine, and it kind of does some loop-de-loops. I don't know if that's an official term. But on the map, it comes close to connecting, but it doesn't. You'd have to make another connection much further west. And I think when we looked at that, it's not easy to connect. You'd have to build a connector track. Yes.
To where?
Between the B line and the main, Norfolk Southern main line.
Okay, all right. So we wouldn't follow out on the Virginian line anywhere.
It does actually get a little flatter when you go about 10 miles west of Whitethorn.
Okay.
And then it gets back up in the mountains again. But it's an old coal mine. But they still use some extra coal. And if you're familiar with coal mines, that's why you see a lot of the jagged pieces here and there that go in coal mines. I think that's also part of the study, the connection. That connection is one logical connection sooner rather than later.
Okay.
Further questions?
I also want to point out that working with FRA and Army Corps is going to be part of the determination as well. I want to minimize that. As often the FRA is a governmental document.
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's not our environmental document. It will be FRA's environmental document. We're just doing this on behalf of them, and then they will approve.
Mr. Pitter?
So Mike, you may have said this, but I just want to make sure it's clear. So we are recommending in our capital budget, we're going to present after lunch, to fund to the least costly alternative at this time. We do have the funding available. And then when these analysis is done, I don't know if it's later this summer or the fall, then make a final decision as far as which alternative to take.
That's a very good point. Just because the funding for one alternative is in the budget does not mean that's the staff's recommendation. That's just the available funding we have to get.
We consider that a placeholder.
A placeholder, yes. The 366 million is a placeholder to the least costly alternative to New York.
And an additional 200 million from what's currently been approved in the budget from our inception, essentially. So we're adding the 200 to get to that least costly alternative. That's our recommendation to the board later in the capital budget.
And also, Mike, you could do what was done between Roanoke and Lynchburg, is to run the bus service to see what's the demand before you answer Jim's question.
There is already a bus connection.
There is a bus now from Christiansburg to where, Roanoke?
Yeah.
Okay.
plan on taking it to get down there. Taking the train down. There's a connector bus to meet you at the Amtrak station in Roanoke. Gets you to River Valley.
Okay.
I am taking it, just buckle up.
All right. Ms.
So
Bulova.
alternative A, which is after lunch, we'll talk about our capital budget. Doesn't preclude service to Bristow, but it does stop short of where you kind of like for your station to be. And that will be our decision to make as far as the funding goes.
So not, right now with the budget, the recommendation is going to be that we fund to this lowest cost alternative. As these guys continue the work with NEPA, continue the engineering to advance both sites to 60%, they will come back to this board with more information from an engineering perspective and a financial perspective before this board makes a determination on which alternative to pursue.
Right. And the alternatives analysis is a combination of all the things. It's financial analysis, it's operations, it's environmental, it's engineering, as well as the public. So we'll take all those things into consideration. We'll present them to you, everything that we heard from the public, and you'll see the costs and, again, the design as well.
I'm glad, I was just going to say, I'm glad you made that clarification because my question was going to be funding to this lowest amount today that doesn't achieve the goal that I think there's agreement on, that is the larger picture. Will we incur, I know we'll incur greater costs because of inflation. However, will that be a more costly project going forward? And it sounds like all of that will come back here for consideration at a later time.
Very clear, not just because we're putting alternative A or funding that level in the capital budget or recommending that level. That is not a decision for that alternative. That is all just a placeholder for future decision by the Q. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Very good briefing on a very complex issue. We're going to break now for lunch. We will reconvene at 12:45. And so Jason, if you could take the stream down.
If I'm heading out that way, I need to have some serious body strength. I need to get out of that tunnel.
Even imagine.
I'm like, yeah.